I'm Tim Malloy with the Palm Beach Civic Association, and this is Palm Beach TV, your island's newscast. This is an exciting time for the Civic Association's 76th season with our sponsorship program growing. We're pleased to announce the newest sponsor, the Fortin Foundation of Florida. They're the sponsors of the newscast that we bring you week after week this season. We extend our gratitude to the Fortin Foundation of Florida. And now, our newscast. We begin with a week in the season unlike any we can remember. An Iranian national picked up at Bradley Park, acting suspiciously. A chase from the breakers right past Mar-a-Lago with shots fired. 2 boats ashore with dozens of immigrants. I talked to Chief Nick Caristo about that period and the teamwork it took to keep everything under control.
It's safe to say that in his 15 years of service with the Palm Beach Police Force and 20 years with the NYPD, much of it in the Bronx, Chief Nick Caristo has seen a lot. But for a nerve-jangling period in January, the 140 live surveillance cameras tracking activity in town for the police were loaded, beginning with an Iranian national arrested in Bradley Park.
At that time, Iran was naming their spots that they, if they were to target something, Mar-a-Lago was one of them. And it's just the timing of everything. And then we have an Iranian national on Palm Beach with concealed knives and a pickaxe and a machete.
And $22,000 in cash.
And $22,000 in cash stuffed in, inside his clothes.
How do you not respond to that? You've got to do.
No,
take a look.
We did, and we handled it perfect. And you're not going to have any general orders or policy for something like that. You have to think outside the box.
The communications room also had its eye on the town's streets as a troubled woman led authorities on a high-speed pursuit that ended up with shots fired by U.S. Secret Service and sheriff's deputies. That was near Mar-a-Lago.
She went through both checkpoints, and the second checkpoint, which was closer to Mar-a-Lago, they know they opened fire on her. She still managed to get over the Southern Bridge, and where she was subsequently apprehended and arrested at that point. At that point in time, our department took a step back. We weren't involved. We just offered assistance at that time, the PBSO and Secret Service.
The beach landings, 2 of them, one in broad daylight, one in the early morning hours, were detected quickly. These are events the police train for.
The first landing was unusual because it happened in daytime hours. It was light out. That's unusual. They usually use the cover of darkness to come in. I think they caught like 6 in the beginning. And what they do is they automatically debrief them, whoever's caught, because we have priorities. We want to make sure nobody's in the water drowning. It's all about safety, and want to make sure they need any medical attention, because sometimes they come over and they're dehydrated. So we want to see if anybody's sick or ill. So we have medics come and check them out. We notify Border Patrol. Border Patrol would come. They would give assistance. Because there was about 12, I didn't want to leave the rest of the town vulnerable, so we asked for assistance for PBSO.
David Duffy, a member of our executive committee and the Public Safety Committee, speaks for many.
One of the prime reasons people come to live in Palm Beach is public safety. And we are so lucky to have a police department like we do, and a fire rescue team like we do. Amazing. The technology that these guys have today that we don't all know about, the drones, the cameras throughout the island, car readers, it's just something. We're proud as a public safety committee to work with our chiefs in both departments. We want to support them in every way we can, including this communications. What you're doing today, or the story you're going to tell today, is just one example of how we can help.
And now, more on the migrants coming ashore. As mentioned, 2 incidents that had law enforcement scrambling and residents very concerned. On January 17th, 12 migrants came ashore in a boat. And that was just the beginning. The men who beached the boat north of the Palm Beach Country Club were quickly detained and will be sent back to their countries of origin. The dash to Florida shores, very likely from the Bahamas, had little chance of success. High waves, high seas in the attempt during the day, and the boat clearly visible from a busy North County road. And then Saturday night, it happened again. This time, 9 Haitians coming ashore almost precisely where the previous boat came ashore a few days ago. They were captured. As ill-conceived as these landings seem to be, they are a troubling new trend that's going to have to be reckoned with. There are 600 islands and keys in the Bahamas. Only 10% of them are populated. Desperate people from all over the world are using those islands as stepping stones to get as close as they can to Florida, which would be Grand Bahama Island, 55, 60 miles away. From there, they make the race across the water, a dangerous race across the water. Troubling because obviously they're risking their lives, but it's also taxing on the people who live here and on our law enforcement. Whether hoping to connect with family already here or simply trying to slip into the country to be assimilated, the migrants are increasingly multinational. A few years back, 12 migrants were detained in Palm Beach, among them 3 Haitians, 3 Turkish nationals, 4 Jamaicans, 2 men from Sierra Leone, and more from many countries are trying to get here. Add to that, conditions in the northern Bahamas, especially Grand Bahama, hit by that terrible hurricane. Life was never easy for people there in the beginning. Now it's worse, compelling many to make the dash to our shores. He's a Princeton graduate, a legendary lacrosse player, a former Marine, a lawyer, a well-known businessman, and for the time leading up to and after the attacks on America, 9/11, the number 3 guy at the CIA. On February 10th, he'll be giving a luncheon talk on behalf of the Civic Association's Global Speakers Series.
These are my CIA medals. This is the highest medal I could have been given by a warlord in a certain country, his sword. So this is something from my agency days, from the Berlin Wall.
His name is Buzzy Krongard, and to say he has lived life to the fullest would be selling him way short. Appointed the executive director of the CIA 6 months before the attacks on America, he has indelible memories of 9/11 and the days that followed.
Everybody thought a plane had, one of the tourist planes hit the building. We had been screaming about terrorist threats, so the second, the minute that second plane, we knew what we were in for, and we rocked and rolled. And as we were talking earlier, the first year, the agency was the leader in taking the fight, back to them, because we had been preparing and ringing the bell for it. This is the oath I took at the agency. That's me in Afghanistan. And
with the beard.
With the beard. I've never had facial hair before or since. That's me sitting in Saddam's throne. I was there the day we got him in Iraq.
Mr. Krongard will be giving his talk February the 10th at Club Colette. The speaker series sponsored by Scripps Research. There are growing concerns now about cane toads, also known as bufo toads, and their numbers spreading in the island of Palm Beach. Their poison, when secreted, is deadly to pets. Here's what you need to know about them. They are ugly and they are very dangerous even when tiny. Brought to Florida in the 50s to control insects in the sugar fields, they have become a non-indigenous disaster. Veterinarian Mary Ellen Scully from Island Animal Hospital tells pet owners what they should know about the threat and how to handle a poisoning.
The bufo toads, they tend to come out mostly at night and with rain, sprinklers, and then when it's dark. So they are hiding in the bushes, in the shrubbery. So you have to watch your dogs who are sniffing around the bushes, because the darkness and the moisture will activate the toads. And toads are just really, it's a protective mechanism that they secrete this toxin off their back. So they're not really actively looking for trouble with the dogs. It's the dogs are, they're jumping, the dogs will attack them. As the dogs touch them, they're absorbing the toxins, the mucous membranes in their mouth. So those are the situations where it's most problematic. So if your dog is out at night, you really want to monitor them. And even if you think your dog got a toad, even if you didn't see it, they tend to salivate excessively, or they're licking their lips, or their gums look red. If there's any inclination that your dog got a toad, it's most important what you do at home. It's not what you do when it comes to me. At home, you got to rinse their mouth out. And when you want to rinse them so that you're rinsing the water out vigorously, about 10 minutes. You can't, the dog should be wet, you should be wet. You want to just really actively rinse their mouths. Big dogs use a hose. Little dogs put them in the sink and then use your little sprayer and really rinse their mouth out. And just, I can't impress that that's what is going to save your dog, what you do at home. Then you get in the car and you drive to me, because if they're going to absorb enough toxin, something is going to happen in that half-an-hour window. And I'd rather you drive to my clinic, sit for a half an hour, have nothing happen, and then you can go home. because once they absorb the toxin, the first thing if they get enough, they'll have seizure activity is the first thing, and then it's usually followed by some heart-related issues. I have no antidote for the toxin in the toads. The things I do is really just give this dog supportive care as their body clears the toxin. And so we'll give them IV fluids to flush it out, anti-seizure medications. Some of these dogs will need to go under anesthesia for a half an hour just till their body is able to clear the toxin. There's no learning curve. He'll get a toad again next week. So just because you brought him in here, he had this episode, he's not going to correlate to the toads and he's not going to learn from it. So it's just really important to recognize the symptoms, rinse their mouth out, and then seek veterinary care so that we can give them supportive care. Because if you do that in that sequence, you're probably gonna be okay.
For the second year in a row, Palm Beachers packed town hall for Where Have All the Songbirds Gone? This time around, eco-experts tackling water quality and the use of pesticides. Here's reporter Wendy Rutledge.
We don't provide food and homes for these birds the way we used to. Used to be very birdy and noisy around here. When I was little, I remember it. And now not so much, so that's why we're here.
That's how documentary filmmaker and moderator Katie Carpenter began this year's community discussion called Where Have All the Songbirds Gone? 2. First to the podium, water quality expert Eric Olson with the National Resources Defense Council. He dropped this stinging fact that the state of Florida has the second worst water quality in the country, right behind Texas.
So 7.5 million people in the state were being served by systems that violated the law. We also found that, surprisingly, 9 out of 10 violations of the drinking water law never faced formal enforcement, and only 3% were actually facing any fines.
Many of us remember the frightening images of the iridescent green alga blooms that sprung up a few years ago on Lake Okeechobee and in rivers fed by the lake, triggered by pesticide and fertilizer runoff from agriculture. But golf course maintenance and even the large preponderance of leaky ground wells all contribute to low-grade drinking water in our state. Eric Olson pointed to a particularly disturbing study on the effect of pesticides known as organophosphates on kids.
And what they saw was they actually could see impacts on the children's brains. And that's a picture, one of the pictures, these red zones that were highlighted is where there were impacts on the brains of the children. Their IQs were going down, they were showing impulse control issues, they had a variety of other impacts on their brains.
Dr. Mark Hostetler, professor of wildlife ecology and conservation at the University of Florida, has done extensive scientific exploration on the harmful effects of pesticides on wildlife, particularly bird life, as a result of pesticide use. To encourage more pollinators like butterflies and bees, and of course more birds, Dr. Hostetler recommends home gardeners do the following 3 things. Go native, as in landscaping with plants native to Florida. Reduce the use of pesticides and fertilizers. And compost or recycle organic food and garden waste to use as fertilizer.
It takes 1 or 2 mavericks. So what I hope you take away from this conversation that we're having is that in your own neighborhood, if you do something different, it causes attention and changes that norm. And so it only takes 1 person or 2 people to really change things.
I'm Tim Malloy with the Palm Beach Civic Association, where membership matters. If you are a member, we hope you will renew. If you're not a member, we'd love it if you'd join us. See you next week with more Palm Beach TV.